Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stover. Now, disaster management in Nigeria dates back to 1906 when the then Police Fire Brigade, now Federal Fire Service, was established to function beyond its firefighting role and go to saving lives, property and providing humanitarian services in emergencies. Now, the scope of services expanded, especially through the National Emergency Management Agency on disaster prevention and control measures. However, increasing climate change, mishaps like road crashes, fire outbreaks and flood disasters have continued to pose challenges. It's on record that the 2012 unprecedented flooding was one of the most challenging for Nigeria that affected over 7 million people, displacing 2.3 million and destroying property, some of which are yet to be rehabilitated. Now, analysts say Nigeria is faced with serious disaster management issues, especially in mobilizing enough resources to fight natural disasters. How prepared is Nigeria for catastrophes like earthquakes, tremors and wildfires? Now, these are some of the issues we'll be examining tonight on NTA Tuesday Live. But first, let's get to see this report by Aliu Tukur.
Emergency management response in Nigeria can be dated back to the early 20th century when the fire brigade was in charge. A comprehensive approach to disaster response began in 1999 with the establishment of the National Emergency Management Agency. Since then, commendable efforts have been taken to improve the emergency management system.
If you look at our obsolete fire trucks, from 1985 down to this present regime, we've been managing those obsolete appliances that has, of course, been refurbished by the present regime. But if you look at the budgetary provision of 2016, you want to believe that it's call for cheering news that Nigerians will begin to find, recourse and, of course, leverage in terms of, firemen doing what they can do at any level of rescue in this country.
Nigeria is prone to both natural and man-made disasters, from flood, drought, land tremor to transportation accidents and pipeline explosion, conflicts between groups to armed attacks. Flooding has displaced more people, perhaps because about 20% of the country's population are usually at risk. In 2010, over 1,000 people were killed in flooding, while in 2012, over 300 people were killed and over 2 million people were displaced. The Boko Haram crisis in the northeast parts of the country saw thousands of lives lost and millions displaced. Fire and building collapse also pose challenges to the nation's emergency management response. With all this, how has the country been responding to manage the crisis?
Our response to national emergency, if you ask me, is not quite appropriate and adequate. We still have so many challenges. When we compare ourselves with the other climes, the way they handle emergencies, you find out that we are not yet there. Granted that we are making some progress, but we are yet to be there.
And I think the level of preparedness has just begun. And if you're talking of preparedness, personally, my opinion is that we are really, up to something else in this country. A situation where we get to fire scene, get to flood, get to building collapse, get to any type of emergencies, we will be able to, live up to expectation. And, the public or victims will be salvaged within a space of time. I think that is the essence of good governance.
National emergencies could be of various types, and we have specialized FDAs that have been saddled with this responsibility. As you are aware, ours in NEMA is to ensure proper coordination of these response agencies so as to get a seamless response. If you are talking about preparedness, there are there are principles that are in practice, and Nigeria is not an exception. So everybody who is supposed to respond to national emergencies know their roles and responsibility. And as I speak to you, they will always be on top of the situation whenever the need for it arises.
In what appears to be no special toll-free line to reach in times of emergency, the disaster management agencies are facing a lot of challenges ranging from inadequate funding and public enlightenment.
Even to the educated public, in quotes, you see that we hardly give recognition to emergencies that abound around us. There is this layman way of playing around with it in Nigeria. God forbid. Yes, as much as God will forbid, the human being to need to put certain things in place. So one of the challenges, mass public, lack of public knowledge, which we can counter by doing mass education. Another one.
When you talk of water, it's just like the blood flowing in the vein of a living human being. So the fire service makes massive use of water. Without water, of course, the fire service will not be where they are in terms of achieving extinction and salvaging lives and property. So we look onto a situation where functional fire hydrants will be incorporated in our urban development, in our markets, in our business premises, in our various MDAs, where you look onto people rallying around stadium and the rest of them. You have the public doing one thing or the other.
If we must respond to emergencies, there should be some data on ground. There must be some infrastructure on ground. All these are deficient in our society, and the earlier we start building them up, the better.
To overcome these challenges in order to have efficient emergency response system, experts are of the opinion that there is need for coordination and bringing all agencies together to be able to work and create one efficient national response system. Aliu Tukur.
Well, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Dr. Oluwole Olayemi Olaumi. He is a Chief Consultant Surgeon, Coordinator, National Trauma Center of the National Hospital in Abuja. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening, sir.
Let me also welcome to this program Air Commodore Salisu Mohammed, Director Search and Rescue, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much.
We're also joined by Assistant Controller Ilechi Collins. He's Head of Public Relations of the Federal Fire Service. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure to be here.
Let me also welcome Nwakba Okore Nwakba, who is Head Communication and Advocacy of the Nigerian Red Cross. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
And then joining us from our Kaduna Network Center, let me welcome Professor Khalifa Ali Idikwa. He's a former university lecturer and now is visiting professor to a number of universities within and outside the country. He joins us from our Kaduna Center. Khalifa Ali Idikwa, thanks for being with us.
Good evening, Cyril. Good evening.
All right, as we always do every Tuesday, we acquaint you with the procedure. At the appropriate time on this program, you can get to join in the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on air. We advise you take advantage of them. However, as we always draw your attention to this aspect of it, for those who will be calling in at the appropriate time, when your call is passed through to the studio, do us a favor, just reduce the volume, turn down the volume of your TV set so we can avoid the hurlback or the echo. And the best way to know your call has been passed through is you'll see your name on the screen. Now, once your name goes on the screen, it means that your call has been passed through. And you can just go ahead, go straight ahead. Don't bother about the greetings. Just go straight. Ask a question or make your comment. And I guess we'll be willing to respond to such issues as you might raise. So once again, welcome to Tuesday Live. Let's begin by posing the very question that everyone would love to ask. Are we prepared in terms of emergencies? What is the nature of our response time? can we cope with the challenges that we're seeing? And let's start, first of all, by putting this question to the Director, Search and Rescue of NEMA, Air Commodore Salisu Mohammed. How prepared are we in terms of emergencies, quick response, the wherewithal to address emergencies?
Thank you so much. I think I would say in a nutshell that Nigeria is better prepared as of today than ever before. The National Emergency Management Agency has put in place different structures at the national level, at the state level, and at the local government level. We have structures which are designed to provide quick response to emergencies. That notwithstanding, there are challenges here and there because of capacity of people at the local level and the state level, that some of them are yet to build up the required capacities. But however, the structures are there. And at the national level, we've built sufficient capacity. We have enough manpower, trained in various aspects of emergency response. We go out there to the public, to the state level, to the grassroots level, to train Nigerians to provide quick response to emergencies. Those structures are there. Yes, we could say what of the equipment. Equipments are challenged. As you know, there will be no adequate funding to provide all the equipment that you require. So the national architecture depends on collective responsibility. So at the national level, we at NEMA, we coordinate national resources towards emergency response. There is no one single agency that will be able to provide all that is required. So we know that. So we now emphasize on collective responsibility, coordination through coordination. We've identified various agencies which are lead agencies, depending on whichever type of emergency. We identify the lead agencies, and then we work in collaboration with them, and then we identify what equipment they have and what equipment are at what place. We have catalog of this, and in times of need, we can easily get to the various stakeholders and say, yes, we have this emergency, can you provide us with this equipment? We have various memoranda of understanding with such agencies and companies all around the country.
Okay. We'll examine these in detail as we go on with the discussion, but key to emergency response is the fire service, and spokesperson for the Federal Fire Service is here, Ilechi Collins.
Yeah, I want to thank you for, for the invitation. And of course, going by your rollout, I want to say here categorically that the fire service today has, been improved upon. And that is the essence. We must thank the present administration for having beefed up the budgetary provision of the fire service that will leverage us in procurement of, needed fire trucks. And very soon, those fire trucks will be coming into Nigeria, because fire engines and appliances are not, product that is being displayed at the, showroom. But of course, based on specification and of course, placement of order. And as soon as, this order that has been already placed, the trucks will come in. And close to 23, old appliances has been refurbished by this current administration, that is the current CG. And based on this, of course, we are gearing to go 24 hours. The fire service globally, inclusive of the Nigerian fire service, are usually at alert. Beyond that, of course, we have our challenges, and like I did say in rollout there, I talked about hydrant. That is water supply, adequate water supply. Some of these are the challenges we encounter. And then, of course, inadequate fire stations across the length and breadth of this nation is worrisome. And of course, the Honorable Minister of Interior, retired Lieutenant Abdurrahman Bello Dambazo, PhD, has been doing his honest best in repositioning the fire service. And based on this, he has written letters to state governors towards ensuring, building of mini fire stations at our various markets to stem incessant fire outbreaks here and there has, destroyed so much properties and of course life in the recent years, or particularly 2016 to be precise. Some of these are what we are encountering, and of course when they are adequately addressed, hopefully this country will see a different fire service.
All right, and we'll now take the perspective of the Nigerian Red Cross, represented here by Wakba, who's head of communication and advocacy. What is our response time to emergencies? How equipped are we to deal or cope with emergencies?
Thank you very much once again for this opportunity. There is greater awareness in the country today than it was in the past. The Nigerian Red Cross Society is a community-based organization, and we do sensitize people on response. We have over 800,000 volunteers, one of the largest volunteer network base in the world. And these volunteers are community-based. To that extent, the Nigerian Red Cross Society is always prepared and ready to respond, since every emergency happens in the community, and our volunteers live within the communities. And this accounts for the reason why the Nigerian Red Cross Society volunteers have always been almost always the first to respond to any emergency in the country. We train and retrain our volunteers to respond. We train them to build resilience in the communities where they live, among the community members, themselves being community members, themselves being affected by one disaster or another. However, the challenges we have in is not different from challenges that other humanitarian organizations may be having, and that is funding. That's where we have challenges, and that is where the preparedness may not always be what we want it to be. The Nigerian Red Cross Society have been created by an act of parliament, just like the fire service or the NEMA and other parastatals have been created by an act of parliament. Ordinarily, we are supposed to enjoy budgetary allocation from the federal government at the federal level and from the state government, even down to the local government areas. But this have not been the case for the Nigerian Red Cross, and this is actually impacting negatively on our response, because we don't always have enough resources to respond as we would.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, emergencies might lead to trauma, serious conditions, life-threatening situations. We have here Dr. Oluwole Olayemi Olaomi, who is a Chief Consultant Surgeon and Coordinator of the National Trauma Center, National Hospital. Now we are with the health sector and response to emergencies.
Well, of course, the health sector is an important aspect of emergency response, and usually we take the last brunt of everything, and the victims or patients eventually ends up with us. Like has been alluded to, the awareness and response is much better today than ever. There is the sense of awareness in the community and even at the government level, because that necessitates the establishment of NAMA, now refocusing and repositioning of the fire service, then the medicals. In recent times, the Ministry of Health have been very particular about the condition of the accident and emergency services in various hospitals across the nation, in terms of the personnel manning them, the level of and functionality of equipments, and materials that are available. And I'm sure many of us are aware that emergency or victims that comes as emergency patients are not asked to pay before services are rendered to them for the first 24 hours. It's not that they don't pay for their services, because people go with the aim that they don't pay for that services because you're an emergency. But within the first 24 hours, it's established nobody asks you to pay, or treatment is not denied because you cannot afford to pay, even in the private hospital sectors. And this has been on for a while. Now, as part of the response of government is the establishment of the National Trauma Center, which is just over 2 years old in the National Hospital. And this particularly focuses on trauma patients, injury and accident patients, because that seems to be the major bulk of the emergencies that we have now around us. And it has really improved at least in the past 4 years, that much I can say. Even the responses to non-trauma patients has improved. The cholera, the flood patients, the victims of the IDPs. If you see the way we handle the Ebola in Nigeria, people actually give kudos to the way things have been handled within the country. This has improved more than 60%. There's still room for more improvements. We still need to create more awareness, especially in the community, in the way people crowd around emergency victims instead of giving help, rather using their phones, want to send pictures, want to be the first to report it and things, instead of taking care of life. How they block the road and increase the risk of having further accidents. And people just, even across the lanes, people will stop and go to see what is happening across 10 lanes, and they're not helping, they're just increasing the hazards on the road. And this we need to tell our people to stop.
Right. That's one very important aspect which we'll return to as we continue with this discussion. But let's go over to our Kaduna Center now, where we have Professor Khalifa Ali Dikwa. And yes, you've listened to the contributions from the guests here in our Abuja Center. And so give us your perspective on how well we're doing with responding to emergency situations.
My one perspective is that when we talk about a response, i.e. we tend to always define it from the city side of it. And therefore, for instance, if we take places like Borno, where I come from, it is a real disaster, human crisis and so on, that perhaps we will discuss much later. The truth is that Nigeria is lucky that not to have certain disasters, i.e. natural ones. And the response for disaster, we mainly talk about fire and building collapse and so on. And the real thing is that wherever you go there, before coming, I did some research in some states to look at how their vehicles and so on are maintained. It is true that the leaders have little or no say about talking about how perhaps to criticize what is happening there in terms of funding. But let us face the reality that even for their own vehicles, maintenance, and even personnel training and retraining has been a very weak thing. Rarely people talk about it, and that they are just there. The vehicles are virtually not functional, and when they are invited to come as response, it takes sometimes 1 hour and so on. By the time they arrive, fire will have even consumed the entire area. And therefore, first of all, it has to do with the mobilization of the people. Secondly, how effective the networking is. And in terms of market and so on, the structure of the market and so on, where the vehicles can go in And all those things are there. And Cyril, let us face it, because it is our own definition from the city, where it is easily, because say the roads are named, the numbers are adequate and so on, it is easy to access some places. But when you look at certain states or rural areas, the response has been very weak, and therefore the people have to do it by themselves in a very traditional way, and that has to improve. Let us do it, let us say the whole truth, so that those at the helm of affairs will now face the reality and listen to those who are directly affected, invite them for their own inputs, what they need and what they require in terms of communication, in terms of the type of vehicles and the terrain themselves. And I think we still have something more to do in process, but with this, the zeal of this government, I don't doubt it, but the speed has to be put in place, because it is one thing to say that funds have been appropriated, and it is quite another for the funds to be utilized judiciously.
Right, thank you very much, Professor. So you've raised very important issues, and let's go back to the basics and start. We just heard that communication is key in responding to emergency situations. Let's even start. Do we have adequate communication channels to report emergencies? Now, we know all over the world there are emergency numbers that you dial. What are the emergency numbers in Nigeria? That's one of the big issues that's been raised time and time again, that you have so many numbers, and in fact, cumbersome numbers that are not easily remembered, even as basic as communication. What is happening here?
Certainly the issue of communication is a challenge. Right now, we are yet to adopt the one single digit number for emergency response in Nigeria. We have series of meetings and agreements have reached. Very soon we'll come out with a number that will be used all over the nation. For now, as it is, NEMA is operating on her own number, which I have published, and police and the fire service, I think the 112 is domiciled with them. So we have been trying to get all the infrastructure put together, because it has to do with infrastructure, so that when the infrastructures are put together, we'll be able to have the 112 adopted from whichever angle you are in the country. You'll be able to call and somebody will pick it. The challenge we have was interagency competition. Police wanted it to be domiciled with them. Fire service wanted it to be with them. We at NEMA, we are saying that we are the national coordinators. It's supposed to be with us, so that when we get the call, we'll be able to inform which of the responder first, who is the responding agency. Then we coordinate. By and large, I think we've passed this. As of the last meeting, we've agreed that NEMA will have it. So very soon, the nation will enjoy the services of one single number for emergency.
Is it surprising that at this stage of our development, because I know that I've asked this question, I think the first time I started asking this question about the national emergency number was about 4 or 5 years ago. And is it not worrisome that at this stage of a nation's development, it's still work in progress?
Yes, if you look at it generally, communication infrastructure is gradually developing or evolving in Nigeria. Prior to the commencement of the GSM system, we know how it was. So this has improved tremendously, and as I said, it has to do with infrastructure development. Okay. It's not something that you get it done within a day or so. So it is evolving, and very soon it will come up.
Okay, the phone lines are already open. We have our first caller from Port Harcourt. Evelyn calling in from Port Harcourt. Hello, Evelyn. Evelyn, turn down the volume of your TV.
I have done that to follow up my
Right, now go ahead.
the national yes, evening calling from Otago.
Go on.
My question
Are you still there, Evelyn? Evelyn, are you still there?
can say
Maybe. Okay, go ahead.
in outside. We don't experience it in Otago. This is the response to emergency which you are discussing of. So many things are happening here and people will die like that. Giving fire outbreak. And one of the reasons is that there is no access road.
All right. Looks like that connection from Port Harcourt is not very clear. But however, we got one thing out of that call. She used the fire emergency as an example. And that one of the issues, no access roads. Perhaps we might add to that it's been known that sometimes there are emergencies, there are fire disasters. You call, the fire service comes. It's not unknown that sometimes the fire service arrives and there's no water.
Well, I wouldn't want to subscribe to that, scenario being painted by the general public, so to speak, because 24 hours the fire truck is at the bay, that is fire station. It is loaded with water, fill the tanker, dependent on the size of the tanker, which could carry 1,500 or at most 3,000 liters. And of course, it's punishable if, of course, the tanker is empty there. But the issue is this: when you get at the scene, you are bound to, within a space of time, dependent on the magnitude of this fire, discharge this water, and within the vicinity, refill and keep battling this fire until you achieve extinction. But whereas there is no functional fire hydrant, what do? The vehicle keep ferrying far away to refill and then come back. And of course, this fire does not wait for you either. It keep destroying properties and even life. So the clamor here is that in our urban development and setup, we must be able to incorporate functional fire hydrants, not build over and over by certain illegalities of people who are, trying to build one thing or the other. I usually cite a vivid example, a very clear one. First time, what? An architectural piece. Each lane, each this thing in Festac then was having a functional fire hydrant.
Today?
Close to thousands of, but all those hydrants are built over.
Right.
It has gone into extinction, so to speak. So what we are saying is that in our urban development and design, let us incorporate this thing and then watch them as we are watching pipeline.
Okay.
Let it be so.
All right, let's return.
Leverage us.
Okay, let's return to the phones. We have Wafo calling in from Lagos. Hello. Hello, Wafo from Lagos.
Good evening, Mr. Civic.
Yes.
Yes, I want to just lay just a little bit emphasis on the fire service. For example, no. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So now in fire service, I thank God Mr. Eleji said something about bringing the truck. Okay? If they will bring the latest drugs for that fire. You understand? It's not when they will go and bring the older model of those drugs. We thank God for the national emergency people, because well, at times we will see them, maybe in Lagos, we see their point. And I also want to tell the federal government, we need those national emergency points in every 200 or 300 kilometers on the highway, and their numbers written on the spot or on their point, so that it can help the accident victims. Okay? I believe Nigeria.
All right. Communication lines are not very clear tonight, but mercifully we can get one or two things, points from which, one or 2 points the callers are raising. And this still goes back to what we're talking about. Questions raised about equipment, vehicles, and like Wafo just said now, sometimes you have very old trucks. Some might want to say some of these trucks are not serviceable. Besides that, we also have the question of access, which Professor Dikwa raised earlier on. And access this time, we're not just talking about roads. Certain constructions, certain buildings, emergency response agencies not having adequate equipment to respond to disasters in the emergencies in those buildings. Skyscrapers, for instance, we've had issues where, there are no ladders that can go up there. We cannot attack fires from the air. I mean, these are the things I'd like both the Director of Search and Rescue of NEMA and Lechi Collins to address.
Well, I want to take that of equipment, old equipment. I want to state clearly here that it has taken the Honorable Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Abdurrahman Bello Dambazo, PhD, a while, and the Controller General to travel outside this country to ensure that the equipment that is coming is that of the state of the art. And I can assure you that the moment this trucks comes into this country, the fire service we are having today will be that of the normal fire service. In fact, that can compete elsewhere. So having said that, anything old is a foregone issue. They are working towards that, not to bring anything, more than firefighting appliance. Having said that, in accessibility, both homes, MDAs and market has been the bane of firefighters. I keep saying that. Taking, for instance, in Lagos, when we have this Balogun fire, you couldn't imagine that you can access either way. Luckily enough, of course, the Sabungeri market in Kano that was gutted by fire. And of course, the Controller General himself paid a visit twice there. But today, there is access in that market. So we are working towards that. Okay. It has been a very holistic campaign to ensure that state governors key into this. And Kano has leveraged its citizen there. Niger State is towing that line too. And some other states are complying. I can assure all this.
Okay. Before we go to Commodore Mohammed, let's take this call from Kingsley, calling in from Ebonyi. Kingsley, hello. All right. I think we lost that call from Kingsley. Yes, Director.
Yeah, concerning accessibility, as my colleague has rightly said, we at the National Emergency Management Agency, the role we play is to embark on national awareness, to educate the citizens on the need to be compliant to building plans and to allow these infrastructures to exist, because they are meant to provide quick interventions. Until such a time that they are made to be aware of the importance of this to their own security, they don't pay much attention to it. The greatest challenge in this direction is the role of the state government and the local government. At the federal level, ours are to respond to emergencies that are beyond the capacity of the state. Today, we end up doing even what the state is doing because of lack of adequate response from the states. We go down now to the grassroots for campaign. That's the job of the states. So you could see where the challenges are. Nigerians are ready to change if they are aware.
Well, this is evident in so many cases where you find anything goes wrong in the states and local governments, the first thing you hear is there's a call going out to the federal government, to NEMA.
Yeah.
What's happening to response at those levels of the country?
Yeah, the national emergency management architecture is based on 3 pillars. At the national level, the National Emergency Management Agency; at the state level, the State Management Emergency Agency, and the local government. But the biggest challenge, as I said, the response of the state government has not been adequate. Most of them found it difficult to even make budgetary provisions for emergency. So if you look around carefully, look at the budgets of the states, you hardly see enough attention being paid to emergency response. They don't believe in it, or they don't even think about it.
Okay.
So when it happens, they are caught unawares, and the next thing is that they run to the federal government, even emergency that is within the capacity of a local government.
Okay. Besides, we'll have the issues again. We'll talk about that as well, the issue where people do not believe in being prepared for emergencies, and you find Nigerians saying all the time that, well, it's an act of God.
I think the people are not well informed, and we are so religious in Nigeria that, like you said, we take everything to be an act of God. And this is because at the grassroots, the information do not go around for them to know exactly what to do and what not to do. And I think until there is a kind of decentralization in emergency response in Nigeria, we will still be grappling with what is going on now. Like every call going to NEMA, every call going to the federal government is not the right approach. There should be awareness where other agencies will have to do something, where other agencies will be equipped by the federal government, because the federal government cannot do everything on alone.
Right.
And the Nigerian Red Cross Society was created as an auxiliary to public authorities in emergency response on humanitarian services to fill the gap where the federal government, for certain reasons, cannot reach at every particular point in time, since it is not possible for the federal government to be at everywhere at all times. That's where the Nigerian Red Cross Society plays the auxiliary role, but where it is concentrated at the center, and it is not, others are not given the opportunity or equipped to help the federal government, we'll still be having issues.
Okay, let's take on this call from Ngozika, calling in from Lagos. Hello.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, my name is Ngozika from Lagos.
Right, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add up of what our head of NEMA said concerning rescue. Really, I think I am a traveler. I do see all of these emergencies on the road. Sometimes, of this accident, I was on the way from Lagos to Ibadan Express Road when a vehicle, the man was on high speed. He met up with this hackers that got an accident there. The man burnt. Before they would rescue the man, it took some, what they call them, all the transporters, drivers to rescue the man then. And I did not see, it took about 3 hours for us to see any emergency staff to be there. We're crying, calling different types of photos, water safety, all those people. Nobody was there. 3 hours So I don't know if they can at least give them at least maybe 3 kilometers or 5 kilometers, you know, because the roads are bad.
Okay.
I just wanted to talk about that. That's why I called. Thank you very much, sir.
Right, thank you. Ngozika from Lagos. That's another angle to it, and with the rate of road crashes and response to them. But before Commander Mohammed takes on that, let's take this question to Professor Dikwa in our Kaduna Center. Now, in his opening remarks, Dr. Olaomi mentioned something that's it's a trend we're seeing these days, especially with the advent of smartphones. There is an emergency situation, and instead of people assisting, calling the response agencies or doing something, out come their phones, and they're filming and placing on the internet and being the first. What kind of attitude is that? What's happening to that humanitarian feeling of helping out?
Look, Cyril, the thing is, the basics have to be put in place first by the authority or by the agency itself. For instance, now, how do we explain the situation, for instance, at the beach in Lagos, for instance? Most of the time, people were woken up by flood. How many times did we see a chopper? Perhaps the medical doctor who lost his life, who committed suicide, would have been saved if we had that emergency thing that with just a dial you get emergency coming up to save a life. Again, in terms of fire disasters, for instance, if you remember the last time you Cyril, were in Maiduguri for the award, Dambua Road alone had some water points where the vehicles or the tanker could just does not have to come back to the base in order to fetch more water. And those water points are no longer there. That is the capital. What about the local government areas or the villages and so on? These are practical things that we have to put in place, create awareness, and perhaps ask the people themselves to look after those items, perhaps by asking them to contribute peanuts to make sure that they too feel that those vehicles, the roads and so on belong to them. But for now, we tend to define government as an entirely different entity that it does not belong to anybody, and only the officials are representative of government. That level of awareness is still lacking, and therefore let us not define things from our elitist point of view, and let us face the reality. The way things were allowed to dilapidate, to rot, the same thing happens with the emergencies such as fire service, their vehicles and so on. Exactly the way in the past we had telephone booths, what are they now? You see, that discipline of a thing, the state government they themselves should believe that anything that is coming from the federal government and placed there in their own states should be able to know that those items belong to them, and the people must understand that it is their own money that was sunk in order to get those vehicles. You can have a tanker with full of water you earlier referred to, but sometimes you may not get a vehicle with good tires. And where do they go? Nobody knows, because anything that has to do with spending money, to me, democracy sometimes is a problem, because the slightest thing has to reach the office of the governor or the commissioner and so on. If they are not around, then anything can happen. Therefore, our own response has to improve, not to talk of what is the disaster that is happening in the northeast, for instance, in Borno State, Bama, Goza, Baga, and so on. Humanitarian crisis, perhaps we are going to talk about it much, much later. The response is just about paper and ink. writing it without actually following it up. We like to have to say, Director earlier mentioned that equipment on the way coming to Nigeria, we like to have a framework to say that this equipment will be put to use within so period, and for people to go and test to say that they should be in by April, or for instance by June. It will take 1 month to distribute them, and they should be ready for use by July or August, so that Nigerians know, and they know the numbers to call, and how all these numbers, are they free? Are they free? How much time do you spend in order to get through the lines? And most of the time when you call, people may not even pick. If communication agencies themselves, if you have problem with your phone, you call, sometimes they don't respond. You cannot really be sure about a neglected area where sometimes their allowances are not paid in time, their own overhead costs. These politicians believe that it is too much for them and so on, simply because Nigeria is lucky that it does not have too much of natural disasters like earthquake, windstorm, etc. But we would like to have a situation where the military or perhaps the Air Force should be able to come in with a vest in terms of flood, as it happened in 1991 when the Maiduguri streets were turned into rivers. Nothing like the response came. And it was just a news about disasters, people losing their own lives and so on. But the response, if Lagos is finding it difficult to get response from those agencies, what will happen to remote areas like Sokoto, Zampara, and so on, Yobe State, and so on? These are stark realities. With the information technology and so on, we should be able to put our problems online for people to say. We should be able to say the State Ministry of Internal Affairs or Information should be able to put in place scenario or even platforms to say how do you come to the rescue of your neighbor, no matter who is affected. Everybody should feel that it is the business of everyone to save lives first, and that how many times quacks were punished for bad infrastructure in terms of the buildings that keep on collapsing in Lagos and other places. Nobody, virtually nobody, they only take to court and then they just for lawyers to play gymnastics in the court. And with the semantics and technicalities and so on, cases were dragged.
All right.
It keeps repeating, because that mentality, that impunity of a thing that anything can happen.
Okay.
If organizations like engineers, quantity surveyors, and
yes, Professor Dikwa, some of the points you have raised there, some of the points you have raised are issues that I'd like the Director of Search and Rescue of NEMA to address. But before we get to him, again, let's still return to an earlier issue. Even the response by medical personnel, there have been complaints generally that in terms of emergencies, you find that the response is not to, even for health professionals. And this is further compounded by the fact that people who ordinarily should be the first at the scene of an emergency, these days not in the least thinking about helping out, but you find people who are just crowding scenes to watch, or as you mentioned yourself, to take pictures. And when eventually victims get to hospitals, well, the fact that you say the first 24 hours, no one asks for payment before treatment. What happens after 24 hours? Suppose the victim is in a state of coma. Then they begin to look for who's going to foot the bill. And these are issues that have been raised, Doctor.
Well, if we look at it from the scene of the accident into the hospital, then there's a very big lacuna which we need to come into. where's the emergency ambulance services? Because when you talk about response, the medical services usually are located in a place. But before victims get to the medical services, people must move them. They need to be moved by professionals. They need to be transported in an adequate, professional, and efficient way without compounding the damage that is already being done.
Many times we see victims being conveyed in open pickup trucks, all manners of vehicles, and they just,
They also need to start having treatment from the sites of the accident before they get to the hospital. Because it's the way you present the victims to the hospital that determines overall the outcome that you're going to get from that patient. So obviously, apart from few states now, emergency ambulance services is absent, apart from Lagos, maybe Enugu and Port Harcourt. And we need to put this in place. Now, when they get to the hospital, people expect the kind of response they see on the television, in films. But people don't think about what had gone into those services before it happened that way. Where is the communication? If you're bringing a patient to me in the hospital and you have communicated with me that you're bringing a patient that possibly has a fracture, I know I will need to get somebody who is an orthopedic surgeon. I know that person cannot walk, so my trolley will be waiting. You will tell me how many minutes it will take you to probably get to me. So I also will have been prepared to receive you. That is when I start running. But the situation we have now is when you get to the hospital door that you will start running. And then the next thing is the shout. Where are you? Who is this one? People are not waiting for those to just come. That is not what. People are busy doing something else. Even in the emergency rooms. So Nigerians need to understand that they need to inform that you're coming, then we'll get prepared to pick you and we'll be waiting for you. Once that is not there, then when you arrive, you give an information, then the emergency services as it is, then redeploy and then give you the service that you needed.
All right, we'll take a short break here. When we return, we'll take other aspects of responding to emergencies. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. It's still a matter of responding to emergencies. And just before we took the break, Mwakwa, the head of communication and advocacy of the Nigerian Red Cross, was going to comment on the issue we raised with Dr. Olaomi, talking about communication, being prepared to receive emergencies, health officials and paramedics. Yes.
Yeah, actually, what happened at the scene of incidents is very important. We mentioned earlier that when there's an accident, people, instead of helping, will just be filming and posting. At times, they're not doing that because they enjoy it. It's because they don't know what else to do. They do it as a kind of humanitarian service to inform people that this is what's happening now. Can anybody do something? Now, because they cannot help, they don't know what to do, they cannot help, and they do what they can do. Now, it is important that communities, people on the street are trained to assist. And that's why when the Nigerian Red Cross Society developed a tool we call Community First Aid, where we train community members where these accidents, where these incidences will occur. Before taking them to the hospital, they should know what to do when someone collapses. They should know what to do when there is a fracture, when there is an accident and somebody is bleeding. At the scene of accident, if Nigerians are trained on first aid, basic first aid, not that they will become expert or become medical doctor, and that's when we talk about paramedics. It's like people are specially trained to be paramedics, which is so. But there are things that others can do to help immediately, which is actually lacking. Like I said, that's where we develop this tool and we've been training community members who will now respond before taking them to the doctors, who will not always be there at the community level or at the road side where the accident happened.
You see that happening a lot in communities. A citizen collapses and the next citizen just heap buckets full of cold water on them, and that's about all they do. So who is going to spearhead the enlightenment of citizens on basic first aid, while before the professionals arrive?
The Nigerian Red Cross Society already started it.
Right.
We already developed this tool and we are going from one community to another training people. But the fund is not readily available to do this in all the communities and as wide as we want it to be. And so if we have funding from spirited individuals, from government, like I said before, we are created and we're supposed to enjoy budgetary allocation from the government, which is not yet the case. If we have such fundings coming to the Nigerian Red Cross Society, we have the capacity, we have the manpower, we have volunteers at the community level who are trained, who are ready to train others, but the funds are not always there for them to do this the way it should be.
All right, thank you. Well, Commodore Salisu Mohammed, Professor Odekwa raised some very serious issues relating to the Northeast, IDPs, as a result of the insurgency that has ravaged that part of Nigeria. Now, what are the challenges that have been presented to NEMA, for instance, in tackling this scenario in the northeast, where you have huge populations that are displaced, that, arising from the insurgency, who are in need of quick response?
First of all, I would like to say that there are enormous, very huge challenges. Challenges in the sense that we are supposed to work in coordination. NEMA being a coordination agency, she's more or less now becoming a first respondent, if you look at it critically. We have other lead agencies like the Federal Ministry of Health, Federal Ministry of Water Resources, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, and so on and so forth, who are also supposed to contribute towards the management of the IDPs. But as it is on the ground, what you hear on the news, and when you go to the camp, it is not the practice. In the sense that it is evidently shown, I have gone to the camp severally. They are the lead agencies, particularly now in the issue of health, provision of medical assistance in the IDP camps. The lead agency there is supposed to be Federal Ministry of Health. So we coordinate with them, collect all other necessary assistance, contribution from other agencies, from donors, and direct them to the Federal Ministry of Health for on-one delivery and provision to the IDPs. But if you get to the ground, for one reason or the other, you are not going to meet them. Maybe issue of security or lack of access to the IDP because of security environment. So NEMA eventually does the job. So it's becoming overwhelming.
All right.
And then people now look at NEMA as doing their job, instead of looking at it that we are doing it because the other agencies are not doing it. They are failing. We are not doing it because we enjoy doing other people's job. We know what our mandate specified to coordinate national resources towards response to emergencies. But we are now becoming first responders. If you go to the camp, you see NAMA ambulances, NAMA staff providing medical services, NAMA staff providing water. Where are the lead agencies?
All right, that's a big question which we'll ask around other guests. But let's take this call from Shuaibu, I believe, calling in from Abuja. Hello. All right, we lost that call from Shuaibu, we lost the link. So I would just like to encourage you to call back, and the lines are still open. Now, this is what we're faced with. But let's go back to our Kaduna Center. Professor Dikwa, you heard the NEMA director search and rescue, itemize some of the challenges that lead agencies are not doing what they're supposed to do. Now, how do we begin to ensure that the whole idea of responding to these situations is streamlined and other agencies know what they have to do?
Now, no, simply because other agencies and civil society groups are also doing their own bit. Therefore, the credit does not go to NEMA alone. For instance, we have over 200 registered NGOs and civil society groups in Borno alone. And with the disaster, the catastrophic situation in northern Adamawa, Yobe, and so on. And I think the synergy should remain established. There shouldn't be certain rivalry and so on. And that at times, for instance, humanitarian organizations from the UN, European commissions and so on, have the tendency of trusting. They find it difficult to trust certain organizations because when the disaster is overwhelming, it is not easy for every one, to do it, particularly when state governments of Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa find it difficult to cope with the situation on ground with little or no funds or a backup coming from the federal government. What we hear about figures and so on, helps and so on, they are simply not enough. That is why people are complaining. If over 3 million are displaced and that what is going there, it is just in terms of thousands and so on, it is not enough. And again, the vehicles are simply not there. And those who have vehicles, the vehicles are not all serviceable. I had a situation in Kaduna where we had a vehicle, a tanker from the fire service breaking down along the highway to go and quench fire. It did not work. And it also happened in the past that it was a private organization that was going to the rescue of people simply because the vehicles in the Kaduna are simply not functional, not equipped enough. And it is not easy for them to just come out and condemn or perhaps expose what they have as a problem within. And therefore, we find it expedient for perhaps state assemblies and so on to sit up, to look at the things that people need in terms of emergency, how to have, if people in GRS do not have access to pipe-borne water, water is not flowing, the taps are dry, how can we have water points from which the vehicles can just reload and then go back in order to quench? Let us be pragmatic. In the past, the neglect has been so overwhelming, and we can now pick up the pieces and perhaps mend them, establish synergy, communication and so on, where somebody does not pick the calls and so on. There should be a check of a sort of check and balance somewhere, that somebody ought to be reprimanded for not promptly responding. And therefore, if nobody sees a particular scenario as his own, then there is a problem. Hence, I find it experience. For instance, now in your own studio, you know that camera A, camera B, and so on, somebody behind it, if there is something that is not good enough, you know the person you are going to hold accountable.
Okay.
But it is not the same case with some of our state governments.
All right.
And that they only like to talk about the mundane things and crisis.
Well, we'll look at other aspects as well, but let's get back to the phones, and we have Abdulrazak calling in also from Kaduna. Abdulrazak, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Sorry, please, my question is for the fireman. Sorry, please, is the fire truck in the station for decoration, or are the fire trucks in the station for sending water to the public? Because there's a small incident that happened here in Kaduna. In Tudunwada, Tudun Power Station, which 5 houses from the fire service or fire station, a house caught fire. But the fire service people cannot able to quench the fire or off the fire. People approach them why they do not get there in time. They told the people that they don't have water in their tank. This is 3 months ago. Then another incident happened just 30 days ago, in which a house at the back of the fire service caught fire. The same fire service people cannot able to quench the fire in that particular house. So, my question is, please, is the fire still selling water for their own personal gain, or are they there to serve the people? Thank you very much.
All right. Abdulrazak, thank you. Well, Elechi Collins might want to comment on that.
Really, I have said it, and of course, issue of water is very germane, very important for our cooking and of course fire service. If you look at the scenario I just painted or painted much earlier, the issue of hydrant is there, it's lacking. It's a very big challenge. And if you look at exactly what he has just said, it boils down to what I have earlier painted, that we needed a functional hydrant wherever so as to be able to, because if you look at incidences, accidents or disasters, it's usually located at one locality. It is not something you say uniquely it must happen here. No. It could be at the remotest part of the state. It could be at the city center. But of course, let us have this functional fire hydrant so as to refuel. Because I do know I'm a ground firefighter. This is my 35 years in this job. My own house has been raised down in 1996, where I was staying very close to Kilo, 14, I don't know. So when I'm talking fire. It's exactly when you don't have all these functional things, it becomes a very big challenge. Saying that fireman is selling water, I don't subscribe to that.
Okay.
And of course, responsiveness matters so much in terms of timing. If you stage manage fire, no matter the smallness or the magnitude, so to speak, it could snowball into something that even endanger your life. So you have to call the fire service timely, because firemen are not spirits. It is when you call them, of course, you call them timely. You liberate yourself of that destructive effect of fire.
Okay, let's try and get this call from Yusuf. Yusuf is calling in from Maiduguri. Oh, there. We lost that call from Maiduguri, but I'd like to encourage Yusuf to call back. Let's get back to the health sector and how important it is in emergencies. And yes, there is a National Trauma Center at the National Hospital in Abuja, which we might say is well equipped, as Dr. Olaumi would say. But do we have such centers across Nigeria?
No, to the level of the National Trauma Center. But there are other trauma centers. Please, I'm aware of the Ondo State Trauma Center. I went there for accreditation. I think there's a trauma center in the Lagos State University, or a trauma area. But to me, what is most important is not just building these structures, is getting an effective and efficient accident and emergency centers. And to me, this is where we need to focus now, not just trauma centers.
Right.
For us to have efficient accident and emergency centers, we need to start having a specialty that is called the accident emergency physicians. For now, in Nigeria, we don't have many emergency physicians. In fact, they are not trained by either the National Postgraduate Medical College or the West African College of Surgeons, or the West African Postgraduate Medical College. What we've just started doing is now to train trauma surgeons in the National Hospital as one of the first in West Africa training trauma surgeons. But yes, trauma is part of the emergencies, but there are other emergencies.
Right.
So we need to have specialists that really just look at emergencies as emergencies. That is their core area. And those are the ones we actually need to man the accident and emergency centers of various hospitals across the nation.
All right. Let's go to Benin. We have a caller calling from Benin, Obinna from Benin. Hello, Obinna.
Hello?
Hello, Obinna, go ahead.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah.
First of all, start by looking at the word emergency.
Right. Connection lost there. Obinna, we hope you'll call back. We've been talking about issues we might call man-made, emergency situations. But let's move a little bit forward. Well, some people have said it's a lucky thing that Nigeria has not faced too many of these natural disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, volcanoes. But of course, I would recall that quite recently we've had cases of tremors in parts of Kaduna, cutting across down to this part. So what if there were a real situation? Are we prepared? Are Nigerians going to wait until there is an earthquake or an earth tremor before they know what to do? What do we have on ground preparing for such natural disasters?
Thank you so much. You quite agree with me that disasters of earthquake are quite, I will not say new, they've occurred once upon a time in the country, but they are not commonly seen in Nigeria. What happened at Kaduna was a prompter to the National Emergency Management Agency. We saw a gap and we took it upon ourselves to organize training to sensitize citizens on the response to disasters of earthquake. Through that, we believe we'll be able to reduce the disaster risk. So we are yet to have the equipment that's like early warning equipment in the country, because it is not a disaster that is commonly associated with our environment. So we've not paid much attention to it. But I know now, NEMA, in collaboration with the Ministry of Science and Technology, are putting in effort to get early warning system put in place in these identified areas to be able to give us early warning for us so that the reaction time will reduce. And as far as training and awareness is concerned, we've been conducting simulation exercise. One is coming in April in that particular southern Kaduna area. We've already organized it. We're going to involve the locals and all relevant agencies to practice so that to keep people abreast of response plan and what to do when it happens. We believe through that we'll be able to reduce disaster risk. For now, that's what we're doing. And where it happens and people are traumatized, people have lost houses or properties, we come in there through the federal government assistance to provide immediate interventions in terms of clothing, food items, and medicals to help the needy or the people that are really affected. This has been on the plan. That's what we're doing.
All right. Yeah. Let's try the phones again, this time from Benue. Agishi, calling in from Benue. Hello.
Hello. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, this is Abuja from Benue.
Right, go ahead.
Okay. My point is this. You are discussing a whole lot of issues, and they are very meaningful issues. But I think these are systemic problems that cut across the whole system, from the federal to the state to the local government and to the individuals. And be it as it may, it has to be handled at these levels. But my major issue is this. The emergency issue we are discussing, I want to be specific about road crashes. when road crashes occur, you have people coming to rescue these victims. And then they take them to the hospital. Sometimes they are taken to the hospital right on time. But the problem we always have at the hospitals is they require you to bring a police officer to take custody, or maybe just a police officer to be available. I remember an instance. Early morning I was going somewhere and I found two ladies on the road, almost half dead, and I picked them up. I had to rush to the hospital, and they now told me to go and bring police people. I had to go back to the police station and bring the police officer before these people were treated. So this issue should also be given adequate attention, because I also work in a hospital. I have seen situations where victims come to the hospital almost on time, but because police presence is needed, it becomes a problem at the end of the day. So if this issue can be handled, or maybe if necessary, then police posts should be made available in every major hospital where emergency accident and emergency issues are always brought in to help relieve this kind of hardship for accident victims. I think it's going to be very useful. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Agishi from Benue. Well, back to the health sector.
Well, it may still be having this in the rural areas. Even with gunshot injury that was notorious for people asking for police reports before treatment because of the way police come back to the hospital and either arrests, taking the doctors or health staff as culprits for what has happened. As is no more there, there's a legislation against that now. But the legislation still did not remove the fact that, yes, you brought a patient to the hospital for treatment, treatment will continue, but please, you need to still report this in the police station. It's just for us to be able to track crime and prevent crime. Because there's nothing that stops somebody who has committed crime bringing the victim to the hospital, dumping in the person in the hospital, and going back to say he's also a good Samaritan. We accept this. Once you bring, we accept and continue treatment of the victim or the patient. But we'll still require that you just don't dump and go away. Go and tell the police. Police are your friends. If you tell them this is what has happened, this is what you have done, they come to the hospital with you, they see what has happened, and then you help them with their investigations. At least they know where to start from. So this is important. But he also gave a solution to this. In other communities, as part of the staff of the emergency room are actually police officers who don't wear uniforms, who work in mufti, and they are part, like they're paramedics even from the police. So whatever happens, everybody takes your patients. They are there, they get their information, we treat patients, and when the case is over, they continue their investigations. Even while the patients, but we don't have that now.
We'll return to that in a moment, but let's try and get this call from Birnin Kabi, Umar Anachi. Hello, we've not heard from you for quite a while.
Yes, thank you. To the discussion. Oh, good morning, sir. You see, the experts say journey of 1,000 miles begin with a step. Actually, Nigerians were not prepared for any emergency, but we have started doing something tangible. Just of recent, the Minister of the Interior made an announcement that Federal Executive Council approved the purchase of fire trucks. So it's just the beginning, honestly. But my own opinion is that the problem of quick response and emergency cases in Nigeria, to me, they are three. One, there is a gap, a wide gap between the response agencies and the community. This is one of the problems. There is very wide gap. Then secondly, the government has to invest in preventive measures. There were no preventive measures. You and I know that every year it is expected that there is growth. But instead of the government to invest on preventive measures by not allowing people to build on the water channel and all those things, no, we will just wait until something happens, then we begin to act. This is wrong attitude from the government point of view and from individuals. Everybody will just fall his arm until something happens. Then we will begin to run helter-skelter, seeking for help, seeking for assistance. Preventive is better than cure. Then the final problem is the coordination. There is no proper coordination between the agencies, the response agencies, no proper coordination between them. I was traveling one day around Gusau. We met an accident there, and we wanted to. We saw a police van. Then we stopped them, and police were telling us, "No, call road safety. Call road safety. It is their own duty." So there is no proper coordination between the response agencies of the federal government. May God continue to bless our country, Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. Cyril.
All right. Thank you very much, Umar Anachi from Birnin Kebbi. Well, he's raised a number of points there, but let's hear from Professor Dikwa in our Kaduna Center. What's your response to these three key challenges that Anachi has identified? Response agency not having a good, not having coordination, and well, Nigeria not putting in preventive measures. How do you respond to that?
Of Nigerian doctors, over 60% of them are abroad. There should be a synergy, a formula to attract them, to bring back the brains, just the way professors were brought back by India in the past. Give them the adequate logistics that they need, pay them very well, and they will come back eventually back to Nigeria. Number two, for now, in the northeast, for instance, now the real doctors are the military. The military are actually doing it better because we hardly see medical doctors staying in the rural areas. They are simply not there, and if you go around with the research I did at night, you hardly meet the doctors on call. And the thing, so many things have collapsed in the past few years. We have to start from scratch, remove the bureaucracy in addressing emergency issues. Certain things do not have to waste time in the assembly or in the offices. And therefore, anything emergency should be handled very well. Again, due to the peculiar nature of the Northeast where I come from, the military has been able to open up to talk to the people themselves. I saw a situation in which military personnel, troops, were sharing the little welfare they have with the people simply because the situation was so devastating and very terrible, without seeing the presence of the real people who are supposed to be there for them. And so if the military could do it, and the Air Force could do it, and other agencies too should start employing medical doctors and to be prompt in addressing certain emergency issues. They don't have to be only medical doctors alone, because we don't have them. To get them back in Nigeria, then all what they get abroad should be put in place in terms of equipment and so on, modern equipments, without playing politics with them and so on. Not only when you have the national hospital, for instance, certain things are put in place. The same cannot be said of other states. If, for instance, Abuja is lacking certain things and Kaduna equally close to it, Nasarawa, Niger, and so on, are not having it smooth, then we cannot talk of burning Kebi, as Umar mentioned in the past. Therefore, let us face the reality. Let us not hide our problems. Let us open it without politicizing health issues. And therefore, for now, those of us from the Northeast are appreciative of the effort of the military in responding to emergency cases in remote places like Kala, Balge, Abadam, and so on. So I think we can reach there. Let us reach the bridge, then we can cross with the sincerity of purpose without waiting for long grammar to be written in offices and so on. Because what is good for people does not have to wait for the National Assembly to pass a law or a bill, behaving as if Nigeria had no laws. So nobody is talking about bills in other places. Certain countries do not even have constitutions. But here we are talking about bills must be, the law must be there. Why not updating it as motions and so on? Certain things we have to avoid playing politics, playing all these delays and so on are in us. Let us face the reality that we have this country belonging to all of us. It is not about us alone, but also about our own children. We can fix it if Nigeria's many leaders, Cyril, you may be disappointed that they may not be able to even look at some of you casting news. They may not even recognize your faces because they simply do not watch national TV stations because they don't care. They seem to appreciate what is outside, as if outsiders, other countries were built by the angels. Let us develop the sense of patriotism that this is our country. We can start it. If Dubai could be put together, Nigeria can also be put together. Let us have leaders who are selfless, who can direct us, who don't have anything to hide. Then we can start with additional way of imbibing the sense of patriotism in our own youth. Let us show them that it is not about what they see in movies and what they share in the internet and so on.
All right,
it has
Professor.
to be them because one day you and I are likely to go.
Okay. Well, as we begin to wind down, we must put this across to our guests. And in terms of emergencies, what should be the responsibility of the citizen and what should be the attitude of citizens in helping to mitigate emergencies?
Thank you so much. Emergencies or response to emergencies is everybody's business. It shouldn't be seen to be domiciled to a particular agency or particular organization. We should have it in mind that response to emergency is every citizen's business. When we know that, if you see a motorcycle accident, you are passing by and you feel that it's not your responsibility, then you are not a good citizen. We should cultivate the attitude of helping in emergencies. Once we know that, it is our citizens' responsibility, citizenship responsibility, then we will be able to appreciate and then move forward. So we continue enlightening citizens by way of educating them on civic responsibilities. So it's just for us to wake up on our civic responsibilities, starting from the schools, local government level, state government level, to the federal level. So I think by that way we should be able to approach a solution.
All right, from the angle of the fire service, fire starts somewhere, you find, well, in case of fire incidents, you'd say lots of people will come around and they'll try to put out the fire even before the fire service gets there. But what should be the general attitude of citizens around emergency situations?
think an attitude should be a changed one. That is to say that we should be able to make friends with the fire service, get closer to the nearest fire station, knowing their phone number. It is very, very important. And when you do that, you will, of course, be helping yourself in terms of reaching out, and if you are timely enough to call the fire service, they will always answer you.
In fact, since you're here, I would still ask you, what are the emergency numbers that you have for the fire service, for instance?
Okay, in this very FCT, we have 080. It's a very lengthy one. 080-3200-3557. 080-3200-3557. And of course, you could call 112 or 122.
112 or 122, and they all work.
Yes.
Yeah, because the 08032, who's going to remember that in an emergency? Right.
That is why I say get closer to the nearest fire station.
Okay.
Whether in FCT or Abuja or Lagos or wherever, make friends with the fire service. Yeah.
All right, for you know, such auxiliary services that the Red Cross provides, what would be your advice to people, citizens? Some want to genuinely help, but they don't have the knowledge. I have seen accident victims moved in such a way that, yes, the people around wanted to help, but they compounded the situation.
Yeah, the first and the best approach to emergency response is to be aware of the environment. At times, the hazards may be there for years, and nobody is taking note of them. If you're able to identify the risks inherent in our communities, it will go a long way to help us to prepare. And of course, I'll ask every Nigerian to become a volunteer. Always volunteer to help. And then we can join the Nigerian Red Cross Society as a volunteer. We train our volunteers for free, first aid training, and other things that we need to respond during the emergencies. And we have branches in all the 36 states and FCT. Find out where the branch is, register, and you get trained for free. You can be able to help at any point in time instead of just taking film or just watching without knowing what to do.
All right. Well, Dr. Olaomi.
Well, for the citizens to be aware, they need to be educated. And I think this is where we missed it from the beginning. In the days when we were in schools, the Red Cross in schools, Boys Brigade, Boy Scouts, and the civic education, physical and health educations. And these are our compulsories in the primary school days, where we learn a lot of things about health and emergencies. We need to restore this in the curriculum of the schools. It needs to go back through to the university levels. Then we need to, as a nation, develop emergency ambulance services. It's not only that it will help in the responses, also it will provide for us jobs that is lacking now for our youths, and people will be retrained. And above all, we need to start to cultivate the spirit of volunteerism. And it has to come back into our national consciousness. And this has to be part of the things that people are assessed on when they're getting jobs. You need to learn to volunteer. All the countries that are developed, that are involved in emergencies, right from school, people volunteer.
It's not in our character to volunteer, is it?
No, it's wiped out of it.
Okay.
It's wiped out of it. Even as a medical student, my holidays were spent in the hospitals. I was not paid. It was part of my training. I took it as part of my training, and I enjoyed it.
So, Professor Dikwa, what do you say about volunteerism?
Let me quote Harry in 1984, and he said, "This we shall remain here." No, what is it? This country help me.
Well, we have no other country but
and indeed,
yes.
future generations
have
no other country than Nigeria.
Yes.
We shall remain here and salvage it together.
Right.
And we can, and indeed do it. Let us just restore the confidence that a few people are not stashing away the commonwealth, and that impunity is removed from our own system, and that Nigerian anywhere in any part of the country feel the sense of belonging, and that the kids of the well-to-do or those in a position of influence are not given higher advantages over the others who were part of the voting system. When we were kids, we used to go to school with everyone. We shared everything. But today, many parents are slaves of their own kids because they pick them every now and then for school runs and so on. That spirit, that sense of sharing the pains and joy of others is virtually disappearing because of the level of class we decided to create. Unfortunately, let us say Nigeria first, as Trump continues to say it. Nigeria first, then others will follow.
All right.
Thank you.
So,
and others.
Okay, and I would like to thank you very much on that note, Professor Khalifa Ali Dikwa, former university lecturer, and who joined us from our Kaduna studio. By the way, looking at your resume here, it's quite packed. Studied English, French, Arabic, international relations, psychology, law and intelligence. Well, thank you for joining us. All right. And back here in the studio in Abuja, I'd like to say a big thank you to Air Commodore Salisu Mohammed, Director, Search and Rescue, National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Just a quick one before we let you go.
Yeah.
How far would the other time we heard that choppers were acquired for NEMA?
Yes.
And they're still functional?
Yeah, they're functional. They are very, very new.
Right.
We are deploying them for search and rescue.
Right.
And then we have also an air ambulance, a fixed-wing aircraft, very new one.
Okay.
And she's deployed right now in Kaduna because of the closure of the airport here.
Right, the air ambulance is for emergencies.
Yes,
you know, Nigerians are usually skeptical about these things and say now it's going to be the preserve of the privileged and the high and mighty in society.
Well, that is the belief, but we are ready to provide the service to any Nigerian that is in need.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
And, well, thank you so much to Assistant Controller Ilechi Collins, Head Public Relations of the Federal Fire Service. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
It's my pleasure, always.
All right. And thank you also to Nwakwa Okorie Nwakwa, Head Communication and Advocacy of the Nigerian Red Cross. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Dr. Oluwole Olayemi Olaomi is a Chief Consultant Surgeon, Coordinator, National Trauma Center, the National Hospital, Abuja. We thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And thank you to you too for being part of this program. Next week, we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.